We're going on live on Zoom.
We're live.
And we're live. So there you go. Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. All right. Welcome, everyone. Welcome, members of council, members of some of our staff. And we have our audience here tonight in the gallery. We have members of the public for the special council meeting. It's a planning public meeting tonight. It is Wednesday, March the 29th, 2023. It's just about 6:30. So we're going to commence with the meeting. Tonight's meeting is a planning meeting. However, the formalities are that we do have a council meeting to kick off, and then we go directly to a public meeting. So let me move through this. Item number 1 is the approval of the agenda. So I'll read the recommendation. Look for a mover and seconder. Be it resolved that Council of the Township of Clearview hereby approve the agenda dated March 29th, 2023 as presented. Mover Broderick and Van Stavern. Thank you. Any questions on the agenda? Seeing none, I'll call the motion. All those in favor? And that carries. Thank you. Disclose your pecuniary interest and general nature thereof. Any members of council? If anything comes up during the meeting, please bring it forward. We'll deal with it right away. Thank you very much. Now, at this time, we move to item number 3, which is our public meeting. And so council will be rising as a body to be a public meeting. And by doing that, we now designate a chair. The chair at this point has been predetermined. It'll be me. Generally, we pass it off to the deputy mayor. The deputy mayor has asked me to do it tonight. I said, that's fine. And just before we begin, I want to remind members of council that we discussed at the beginning of the term that we may pass the chair around on these type of things. So be ready for the next public meeting like this. Okay. Someone else could be doing it. Nevertheless, thank you very much. So I'd like to commence with the public meeting. We'll initiate the public meeting portion of tonight's agenda. We invite you to comment on the applications being presented tonight and to engage in the process with us. If you wish to be notified of the decisions of the Corporation of the Township of Clearview on an application being discussed this evening, please complete a public delegation form and please submit the form to the deputy clerk and the clerk's office. I believe they're right over here for those that are here in the audience. Please be advised that your comment or request to be notified form will become part of the public record. Your communication and any personal information therein will be made available to the public unless you express the request its removal. So if a person or body would like to otherwise have an ability to, sorry, is that correct? No, we don't do that. Yes, yeah. That's correct. Okay. Now we will begin with the public meeting in respect to zoning bylaw amendment 2023-005 ZB. It's in regards to 9783 Nottawasaga 67 Side Road, and it's part of this agenda. Our planning staff, I believe Rosalind is leading us in this. So our planning staff, Rosalind, will now start with a brief presentation concerning the application. Thank you. Hi, Ross. You want to go to the podium and then we can see you on camera?
Thank you, council, and welcome, public. And so tonight we're here for a public meeting, and it is file number 2023-05 ZB, and it is 9783 67 Side Road. Slide. Thank you. So this shows the subject lands, and they're shown in the hatched out blackened gray hatch. They're on the map. Next slide. And again, the subject lands are shown here, outlined in red. Next. And just to have a high level on the policy framework, so the current Township of Clearview official plan designates the land agricultural and greenland natural heritage area. And the current zoning bylaw categories on the land are agricultural AG, environmental protection EP, and hazard land overlay. This shows the map of the official plan, and it is designated agricultural and greenland hazard land. And so the agricultural is actually the white area, and the green is the Greenland natural heritage. It's just our box is over the description of things. So anyway, so the existing zoning bylaw map does zone the property agricultural, AG, and environmental protection. And again, so the agricultural is the majority of the land. So it's all this area in here, and the EP is in around here. And then the hazard land overlay, which is really the Nottawasaga Valley Conservation Authority mapping area, is shown in that light blue area. And it is mainly in this end or this part of the property. Next slide. So the proposal, the application states that the purpose of the application is to zone a portion of the lands from agricultural zone to agriculturally related commercial AGC. And the proposed zoning amendment has two purposes. One is to permit an on-farm diversified use on the subject property. And the second is to permit the placement of a farm help accommodation dwelling unit, which would be located more than 50 meters from the primary dwelling. And just as clarification, in this case, there is an existing dwelling on the property, which the applicants wish to convert to the farm help accommodation, and they wish to build a new primary dwelling, which will be located to the east of the property. And I'll have a site plan coming up in the presentation. Next slide. The proposal further goes on to state that the permitted uses proposed for the on-farm diversified use will include agritourism, value-added agricultural products, accessory farm produce retail, a maximum of 500 meters squared, small-scale processing and packaging of local produce / food, cooking classes, a cafe / small restaurant, maximum of 90 to 93 square meters for seating and entertainment, special events, farm office, and farm labor accommodation. And again, just to clarify, I believe that there could be a refinement to some of these proposed uses. And I believe that'll be touched on later on. Next slide. The proposal further, just to clarify on the permission again for the request to have the primary dwelling further than the 50 meters from the farm help accommodation. And in this case, they plan to be 783 meters from that primary dwelling, which is proposed to be new at the eastern end of the property. Next slide, please. And this is the site plan. So it is a bit hard to see, but this is a little snippet of the entire property. Currently, all of the farm clustered buildings are here, and this is a bit of a blow up. So this is actually facing north. The existing house is here, which will be converted to the farm help, or is proposed to be converted to the farm help accommodation. And then this is a bit of the blow up of the other end of the property, which is down here. And of course, this is where the proposed new dwelling will occur. And the distance, so the distance from that and the farm help is roughly 738 meters. Next slide. Notice in circulation. So notice of the subject zoning bylaw application has been given in accordance with the Planning Act, and it was done on March the 8th, 2023. It was done through a mail out and a posting of the sign on the property, and details of the application and the supporting materials have been made available to the public and have been circulated to the relevant commenting agencies. This map actually is interesting. It's a circulation map of all of the mailouts, and all the notices were mailed within 120 meters of the subject lands, which is outlined in red, and the yellowish color and the gray is where the 120 meters limit is, and that was where all of the mail for the notice went out to. And this is at this time is when I will summarize the public comments that we've received to date. I'll just refresh council's memory that I have emailed you all of these comments, and there are 5 public comments that we've received. I am going to really high level sort of just hit some of the high points of those comments. So in the comments, we've heard that there's concern for scope and scale of the proposal, concern for the impacts on the quiet rural neighborhood and on adjacent farmlands and forests, on the quality of water in the stream running east. Concern for the decay of protected farmlands, concern for minimum distance separation, concern for the late nights noise and disturbances, concern for increased traffic, damage on the road, increased conflicts with farm vehicles on the road, increased use of OPP, increased complaints to Clearview, large commercial practices, decrease property values for neighboring properties, possible error in application, carbon footprint and climate crisis concerns, concern for taking farmland out of production, concern for the stresses the proposal will put on the lands, concern for water consumption for a restaurant, concern for sewage and septic loading that will be produced by the patrons, concern for light and noise pollution, concern for the precedent this will set, concern that the application has been revised from what was initially applied for, and not everyone has the same information. Options that put forward would be to withdraw the application or bring it back and further consultation on what might be changed. And the second option would be to deny the application for failure or due process. No concerns with the building of the new house on the east side of the property. And just further to avoid misunderstanding, either withdrawal or denial of the application, and then pursue facilitation, which would be encouraged to be done up front and involve all the neighbors. Concern for hosting of a special commercial event and to operate a store and a restaurant. And that is my high level of the comments received. Next slide. Contact information. So if anyone would like to continue to provide comments to the planning department, I will receive them until we are ready to provide our decision to council. And next slide. Thank you. And then just in conclusion, just a bit of a review of the process that we're in right now. So we're at the public meeting stage. Staff will consider all the comments received. Staff then will make a recommendation to council, and council will either approve or deny. Then there will be an appeal period, and if there is no appeal, then the decision comes into force and effect. And that concludes my application or presentation. Sorry.
All right. And I hope that you'll be available to answer questions.
Absolutely.
Or other staff. So I will call upon Dave Finbow, who is a consultant for the applicant. He's going to make a presentation. I would like to note that after Mr. Finbow's presentation, I'll read a bit of a script, and then we'll have an opportunity for members of the public and or the committee. So Mr. Finbow, you can go right ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Measures, members of council and the public. Happy to be here this evening to present. Joining me here this evening are Gillian Flies and Brent Preston. They are the owners, farmers of the subject lands, and I'm the applicant. They're the owners, of course. If you could put the presentation up, that'd be great. The purpose of tonight's public meeting for us is to listen to the public, listen to comments, and we're here to answer any questions, of course. There seems to be some questions related to the application itself. What does it actually entail? What is the extent or scope of the application? And to be very clear, we've been listening. We've seen the comments that have come into the municipality. And certainly Brent and Gillian have heard comments as well, and we're trying to respond to these comments. The application that was submitted was quite broad, and we certainly have narrowed the scope of the application and the uses that are proposed, partly because we never intended on proceeding with some of these uses, and partly because we're hearing from the neighbors, the public, in terms of their concerns. So we're listening. Can you go to the next slide, please? So one thing, this obviously is a subject lands. Everyone has seen that already. If you want to go to the next slide. So as I said, we're here to receive comments, but more importantly, we're here to listen, not just receive the comments, but to listen, and we will respond to the comments in due course, if not tonight, certainly after the public meeting. I did allude to the fact that we've narrowed the scope or clarified our application, and we've done that in writing with the municipality. We submitted correspondence on March 23rd. And Rosalind was kind enough to have it posted on your website. So it is available there to the public to see the extent to which we've narrowed the scope. And Brent will speak to that a little bit in a few minutes here. But we certainly had not intended on creating the feeling that we were looking for a full-blown commercial use in this very important prime agricultural area. And that's not the intent. So the application is twofold. It's to permit an on-farm diversified uses, or to permit on-farm diversified uses, and to permit the construction of a new farm dwelling more than 50 meters from the farm cluster. I like to word it around the other way versus the way in which the zoning bylaw describes it. And Rosalind did touch upon this, the existing farmhouse, the intent is to convert that into farm help accommodation and the farm office. No new buildings are proposed within that farm cluster area at this time or under this application. What is proposed is to take the current existing accessory dwelling unit that's situated on the property and utilize it as a farm sustainability center, you know, the focus for the farm tours and other things. And some of the other things that Rosalind spoke to, you know, a small cafe on site that would be used as part of the farm tour operation. It's an educational piece. It will speak a lot about sustainability and sustainable farm practices. I've already introduced the owners, being Gillian and Brent. I'm the applicant. An agricultural impact assessment was completed by Clearview Consulting, Inc. They're well known in the province of Ontario in terms of agricultural impact assessments. A peer review has been completed. There were 2 or 3 points raised in the peer review. We just received those comments today. There's nothing there that is of concern. Included in that agricultural impact assessment was an MDS study, an MDS1 study, as well as a soil analysis in terms of where they're proposing to construct their dwelling. And that area was identified as being very marginal land, marginal in terms of agricultural operations. And the resulting conclusion of that AIA, agricultural impact assessment, was the house siting is appropriate. And the peer review consultant had no objections or any concerns with the location of the dwelling itself. Regarding the surrounding EP area, we had an environmental impact study completed. It was completed by an ecologist by the name of Neil Morris. Neil has done a lot of work in this area. Has received comments back from Burnside, being the township's peer review consultant, and just recently responded to those comments. Couple of comments about bobolink and a few other birds of concern. So that is well in hand. Next slide, please. The zoning bylaw amendment application, I've already touched upon it. Sorry, we're on a different slide. Just 1 second. There we go. Thank you. So the new farm is an existing operation. Obviously, Brent and Gillian have been on the property for quite a while now and have grown a bit of a good business in terms of growing organic vegetables and produce and other things on the land. And the new farm will continue to be focused on the growing of the finest organic vegetables and the processing and packaging of the produce grown on the farm. They're not looking at bringing in any type of industrial type of packaging or commercial, even for that matter. It's just going to be the processing and packaging of the produce grown on their own farm. Thank you. In terms of vision, I think it's appropriate at this time that I turn this over to Brent. I think Brent's going to speak for the two of them. And after Brent speaks to the vision and tell you about some of the things that they're not going to be doing, he'll turn it back to me and I'll speak again. Thank you.
Thanks, David. And thanks, Mayor and Council and members of the public. I'm just going to speak briefly to the vision that we have and what we're hoping to accomplish with this zoning bylaw amendment. We've been farming for more than 15 years on this property and living on it for almost 20. And we built a successful farm business. And we've always tried to be good neighbors and to have good relationships with our immediate neighbors. And I want to say that when our neighbors have expressed concern about this development or this application, it's hard for us to deal with because we don't want animosity with our neighbors. We want to be good neighbors. And I want to say to you directly, we have no intention of doing anything that's going to negatively impact our neighbors. That's not what we want to do. I think some of the concern has come out of misunderstandings, and Gillian and I take responsibility for that. We didn't understand the process very well at the beginning, and we saw a lot of permitted uses in the agricultural commercial zone that we thought maybe we might want to think about that sometime down the road. And those were included, and they caused a lot of concern, which I understand. And so I wanted to just very, very clearly state right now what we do not want to do. We are not proposing, and we've given this in writing to the township, and I expect it'll be reflected in a new version of the bylaw that council will consider. But we do not want a restaurant, full stop, no restaurant. We do not we're not proposing a retail store. That's not part of this application at all. We are not intending to sever anything on the farm, any land severances. We know that we're not allowed to do that. We have no desire to do that. And that's something that in our understanding, will never be possible. And that's completely fine from our point of view. We're not proposing any agritourism operation that is going to be open to the general public. So I didn't realize this concern until I had a discussion with Mrs. Fillion on the weekend. I didn't understand where the concern was, but I understood after that discussion that there's a concern about sort of unregulated, large numbers of people showing up on the farm whenever they wanted for agritourism activities, and that's not what we're proposing. What we are proposing is to have a place where people can come, take farm tours, enjoy a meal on the farm, but these would be groups of people who book in advance, and we control the number of people. It's not members of the public randomly showing up. In the past 4 or 5 years, Gillian and I have become very involved with farm organizations, national farm organizations. Gil's on the board and is the recent past president of the Canadian Organic Growers, which represents all 8,000 organic farmers across Canada. I'm currently the president of the board of Farmers for Climate Solutions, which is a coalition of 27 farm organizations across the country representing more than 20,000 farmers and ranchers. And we advocate for agricultural policies that support farmers to adopt climate-friendly practices and support farmers to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions and increase the amount of carbon they sequester in the soil. We work closely with the Canadian Federation of Agriculture. We're really happy that recently Keith Curry, another Clearview farmer, became the president of that organization. And we work closely with Keith to help promote climate-friendly farming practices across the country. And we realized through this work that there is a need for a place where people can come and see the kind of practices that we're proposing in action, where they can come and enjoy a meal made from produce that comes from Clearview and see these kind of practices that are improving the climate performance of agriculture in action. And that's what we want to do. We want to be able to have small groups who book ahead, controlled numbers, to come and tour the farm, to talk about climate or agricultural policy and agricultural practices, to enjoy a meal that's cooked in our existing facility. So we're not proposing any new buildings, as David said, in the farm cluster. The only new building we're talking about now is a new residence that will allow us to use the current residence to expand the farming operations and do the sort of events that we're proposing. So I also wanted to say that we've reached out to all of our immediate neighbors who've expressed concern, to had conversations to try to explain the narrowing of the scope and to address their concerns. And we're always available. We really would encourage people to talk to us directly if you have concerns, and we will address those concerns as we go forward through this process.
Yeah, so I don't think I need to summarize, but I feel like I have to. So there are a couple of things I want to touch upon. So very clearly, the intent is to have coordinated small group farm tours. And these will be tours of the greenhouses, gardens, and fields, along with the educational sessions. And as Brent alluded to, some meals within the existing accessory building that's on the property. That building is currently licensed by the Simcoe Muskoka District Health Unit to have up to 30 persons. We don't intend on increasing it. That would be the maximum number. That would be in these small tours. But again, they're coordinated, they're small groups. The parking will be within the on-farm diversified area, the existing farm cluster area. You won't find the parking out on the side road. That's for sure in terms of that size of group. And in terms of the small gatherings that are anticipated, it won't be any different than what we've seen in the past, where you have groups of maybe 80 to 100 people that will happen maybe once or twice a year, 3 times a year, where again, it will be a celebration of rural Ontario. And again, the site plan associated with the on-farm diversified use area does accommodate parking for those people. We've developed a site plan that's been shared with the municipality that, again, I think is available on the township's website, that shows 40 parking spaces to accommodate the 120 people. And we used a ratio that is similar to, and I don't want anyone to think it's a restaurant, but that's the number that the township utilizes for restaurants, 1 for every 3 occupants. So we wanted to make sure that there was parking, and parking was within the farm cluster. We weren't using up any other prime agricultural land, and that's how it was going to be accommodated. And again, to reinforce what Brent said, they're not proposing a restaurant. They're not proposing retail sales. They will not have weddings or wedding receptions or the general public entering. It's going to be coordinated small groups that are coming. And these things are not proposed, nor is overnight accommodation proposed for the public. So just wanted to make that clear. And Brent touched upon, they're not looking for severance. He knows, I know that they're not entitled to a severance. So that's not something that they're looking for down the road and won't come back for down the road. I'm going to bore everyone with a little bit of policy here in terms of the appropriate planning documents in the province of Ontario. And I think Rosalind may have touched upon a few of these already. In terms of hierarchy in the province of Ontario, there's the Planning Act. The Planning Act anticipates policy statements. The primary policy statement is a provincial policy statement. Within prime agricultural areas, it anticipates on-farm diversified uses, including agritourism uses. Next slide, please. The growth plan, which again is another policy document, it establishes a land use planning framework for the Greater Golden Horseshoe, which includes Simcoe County. And for the most part, the growth plan addresses growth and settlement, but it does speak, like the PPS, to the agricultural and environmental impacts assessments being required for this type of development. And that's what we've completed. And again, I shouldn't use the word development. It's not a development because nothing really is proposed in the way of construction. It's more about adding a few on-farm diversified uses. Sorry, go ahead. The Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs, OMAFRA, they've issued guidelines on permitted uses in Ontario's prime agricultural area. Rosalind refers to it as a green book. It's green, has a green cover. They're meant to complement all planning documents in the province of Ontario, and it does speak to on-farm diversified uses, including agritourism uses being permitted in Ontario's prime agricultural areas. And they do have recommendations in terms of limiting the scope, ensuring it doesn't impact productive lands, and our on-farm diversified uses, in our opinion, falls within those guidelines that are established under the Green Book. Next slide, please. Simcoe County official plan provides policy direction again on agriculture. Again, it speaks to on-farm diversified uses. Next slide, please. And Section 4 of the Clearview Township official plan does speak to on-farm diversified uses as well. So they're contemplated, and they're as contemplated by the PPS, as I said earlier. I think I'm boring everyone, but anyway, next slide. So we feel that the proposal, which is a very scoped on-farm diversified use, is consistent with the provincial policy statement and the growth plan. It is in conformity with the Simcoe County and Township official plans. Next slide, please. So the proposed on-farm diversified uses, again, I think this might be the 5th time we've stated this. It's a farm sustainability center. It's focused on farm tours for small groups. The existing accessory building will be utilized as a focus center for the farm sustainability center, they will provide foods and meals for those small farm tours for groups up to 30 guests. And the occasional special event to celebrate farm experience and local agricultural products and foods with a maximum of 120 guests. That's what the threshold was in terms of being able to provide parking for. Sorry, and that 120 is both inside the Farm Sustainability Center as well as outside. So it's a total of 120. It's not 120 plus 30, it's 120. This slide, although you can't see it, it identifies the farm cluster area and the farm diversified use area in red. And that, along with a small portion of the driveway, account for approximately just slightly less than 2% of the overall farm property itself. And that's consistent with the guidelines in the province of Ontario. Next slide. So I've already spoke to that at the 2%. Next slide. And this is how we calculated the on-farm diversified area. So we've included 50% of the laneway giving access to the on-farm diversified use area. You probably noticed if you looked at it, the existing farmhouse is going to be converted. We've mentioned it's going to be converted into farm help accommodation and a farm office. That is not an on-farm diversified use. That's a regular agricultural use, and that area has been excluded. But we've identified 38 parking spaces, regular parking spaces, plus 2 accessible parking spaces, a loading space, the barn, and the Farm Sustainability Center as being all part and parcel of that OFDU. Next slide. And then we speak to floor area, and there's a significant amount of floor area that's anticipated under the guidelines. We're not planning any new buildings, so we will be looking at limiting the floor area through the zoning bylaw amendment to make it very clear that a significant increase in floor area, enclosed floor area, is not proposed. Talked about parking already on the basis of 1 per 3, 120 people, 40 parking spaces, and that's what's proposed. And although the agricultural zone doesn't require a loading space is proposed in recognition of the amount of processing and packaging of farm produce grown on the farm will entail. And again, I know we've already spoke to the new farm dwelling. The new farm dwelling will be located approximately 83 meters to the east of the farm cluster. And again, it's on very marginal agricultural land. And I think you've already seen this slide. You can go on. So we're here to listen, obviously, and it's our position that the submitted application, certainly as refined, is consistent with the PPS and the growth plan and conformity with the county and township official plans. And we are here to receive comments and answer any further questions that may come forward. So thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Finbo, and thank you, Mr. Preston, and thank you to Rosalind. Okay, so for this committee and for members of the public, the requirement to read this document is right here, and I'll read it and then we'll get to questions. If a person or public body would otherwise have an ability to appeal the decision of the Township of Clearview to the local planning appeal tribunal, but the person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions before the proposed official plan or zoning bylaw amendment is adopted or passed, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the Township of Clearview before the proposed official plan or zoning bylaw amendment is adopted or passed, the person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the local planning appeal tribunal unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to add the person or public body as a party. We've just heard the presentation for this first public meeting, and now we'll have an opportunity for questions to the by the planning committee and members of the public. So at this time, does anyone in the audience wish to make a comment, ask a question, or address the committee with respect to this application? Questions may be directed or responded to by the applicant, their agent, or staff, but should be addressed through the chair, myself. And please remember to submit the delegation form, which we mentioned earlier. Okay, so I will ask, the podium is available. Are there any members of the public who would like to speak for or against or make comment in regards to this application? The podium is available. Come right up, please. So the requirement would be, of course, you have to state your name and your address, and then you can tell us what your concern is.
Hey, my name is Filion. I live right across from the Presence on 97-94-67 Side Road, Nottawasaga. I am a very good neighbor, at least I think so, because I used to babysit for them. I have spoken to Mr. Preston, and he has spoken to my mother. She's a little bit more forgiving than I am because I believe in the environment. I believe in protecting it. And I think the farmlands do need to be protected. I have done a lot of research on Argy tours, and Argy tours first started in Europe because of the decline in debt in the economy. And they needed the tourist attractions from outside countries to bring money into the local farming community. Well, in recent years, France, Italy, and Romania all agree that Argy tours is actually bad for the economy because it brings in traffic, it brings in crime, it actually diversifies the farmland so much so that it is no longer viable for proper crops or for the farmers to maintain it because it builds up expectations from the local farmers that are not doing Argy tours. And I did a great job reading your book. And in his book, he mentions that there's immediate neighbors that unfortunately source out their farms to other farmers and don't utilize the farm themselves, the conventional farming. That is true. I was born a city girl. I came here as a city girl, and I started to listen to all my local neighbors, the Conans, and I heard the need for farmland, the need for farmland. Farmers come out to us from Shelburne, from Hanover, from the local areas that are outside Clearview because there's a lack of prime farming land. And what are we? We're a prime farming land. The Conans have been here. I mean, the Metherills have been here for so long. I just know you by name, sorry. They have been here for so long. And what do? They protect their clusters. They need more buildings. I'm sure they need more barns for their cattle. Heck, we've seen a few of them on the road. And they don't. Why? Because they respect the actual building structure and the amount of land designated for farmlands. I rent out my land because there's a demand for farmland, and bringing commercialism tours. And I honestly think that the problem with this application is not so much the application, but the miscommunication of intentions. Unfortunately, when I did speak to Mr. Preston, he told me that it was an error from the council because he never put those things into effect. Now he says that he had those intentions, but that was going to change at a later time. So this application in a whole is based on miscommunication of intentions. Maybe they should come back at a later time when the intention is pure. Everything is down to the drawings of the home, down to the amount of commercial space they're going to use. Parking lot for 30 cars is a lot in a rural area. That's not a small amount of traffic. That's definitely not a small amount of parking lot. They say no restaurant, it's still there in the application. They say a cafe. I was told there was no intention for a cafe. His planner just clearly mentioned they want to hand out cafes. So based on him very kindly calling us, there is still a miscommunication in intentions and the application. So the application should be up to date, maybe revised in totality, and this town meeting should be used to utilize towards a new application that it actually addresses pinpoint, detail by detail, what is actually going to be used for, and commercialism out of sight. Maybe the township should permit him to build his home, maybe not a severance, but just his home. Unfortunately, it is in the wetlands. I can't even put a billboard next to my wetlands because it will deflect the wildlife. Yet homes, 2 neighbors next to us, everything is becoming commercialized on a road that has been preserved for over 200 years. And it's about time that modernization and socialization doesn't ruin actual livelihood of the farm, the lands, and everything we were saying as Clearview that we stand by, which is conventional farming, farmlands, wildlife. It's right there, protected lands. I am a freshly married woman, 31 years old, but still freshly married. And I want to have a home. I don't want to live with my mom in a room that her bedroom is literally next to mine. Okay. I think at this point I'm still a virgin. And I have a severance 1 acre. I'm not building on it. Why? Because my dreams don't come before the farmlands. I have a business. I operate that business. I would thrive and make a couple millions if I expanded my property to suit my business. I don't. Why? Because I will be tapping into the water resources. I'll be tapping into the wildlife conservation area. I'd be tapping into the soils that need to be protected. Mineralizations, everything is falling apart because of 1, carbon footprint, 2, because there's a lack of respect, and they're wonderful. I admire them for their organic farming. That is admirable. But at the end of the day, the rezoning for a commercial license, no, it needs to not be permitted in that regard. They deserve their home. Absolutely. I am all for it because truth be told, like I said, I babysat for them and they definitely need more space on that home. But it shouldn't come at a rezone and at the cost of a farmland and all the neighbors surrounding, because this will be, and I have to also add one further point. They mentioned 1 event a year. I just read that they get a permit for 5,000 tourists to come to that event. Now they keep it down, but that's 5,000 possible people coming once a year to a small town. And I understand Clearview needs to grow, absolutely, but at what cost also? And that just shouldn't happen. So I think it needs to be revised in all of scope and have clear intentions mentioned and none of the additional stuff. That's my piece.
Okay. Do you have a specific question? I'm just wondering, do you have a specific question you'd like to be clarified? The statement is excellent. I'm just giving you the opportunity if you have a question.
Yes. Okay. It's a stupid question. I'm
That's
so
okay.
sorry. I'm naturally blonde, everyone. I'm sorry.
It was, thank you. Okay.
Why can't there be a severance for them just to have their home?
Good question. I'll look to the staff. Perhaps they could help with that. You guys could just stay right there. You got microphones. You could just answer from there. Sure. Go ahead, Roz.
Thank you. Well, because prime agricultural lands are no longer allowed to be actually severed into residential parcels.
Okay.
That's the simplest way to put it.
Very blunt, easy to understand.
Yeah. So basically it comes from the provincial policies. And the only way that we can actually create a residential parcel in the agricultural area now, prime agricultural, is through a farm consolidation. And that's where you have multiple farms and you may have 2 side by side and you can sever off a surplus residential house, right? Because typically every farm has 1 house on each farm. So the idea would be that you could sever off 1 house and then you would merge like the 2 100 acres to create 1.
Right.
So there just really is no possibility of a farm residential severance, or I'm sorry, a residential severance.
I understand. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. And I see you've got your delegate form. So if you make sure you hand that in at the end of the meeting, thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to speak for or against or have a comment in regards to the application before us tonight? Is there anyone else? Oh, someone's coming. Hello.
I'm being forced to be second.
Okay. Come right forward. No problem. Again, just state your name and your address and then we'll get started.
Absolutely. I'm Dr. Marika Van Schaik of 793-319 County Road 124. That is the property directly south of the Preston's current property. And I have been there since 2001 and I live there with my father. And I agree with you. I would no longer like to live in the bedroom beside him. But nonetheless, I am very opposed to this change, particularly with that commercial change, not so much with the residence itself, but the commercial change, as well as these quote special occasions that may occur during these things. I'm sure most people in this room are already aware of their largest special occasion that happens every single year, which is their Farms for Change, which is incredibly frustrating to us every single year. I have no words to describe how loud that party is every single year. It is hundreds upon hundreds of people, RVs getting trucked in absolutely constantly, parking all the way down the side roads. What I do not want to see is more of those events happening, not even on a smaller scale. These events, to give you an idea of how bad they are for us, in the last 5 years that this event has been held, have not been able to stay at my property because of the noise. There will be noise well into the early morning hours. I work. I cannot be there while the noise is so loud that inside my house with headphones on, I still cannot sleep. That is not okay. My poor father does not leave. He literally just sits in his room hoping for the best. It's important to note, we also have livestock. I have a small herd of 5 horses. They need to be chemically sedated every single time this occurs. If we have more events, even if they're just seasonally, I'm probably going to have to leave. My property is there for me to live there, my dad to live there, for us to enjoy the property and keep our livestock, all of which is put at a huge risk if these proposals continue. I think there's lots of things that have been said, lots of promises, but I think the best predictor of the future is the past. And I mean, if these previous special events, as we can call them, have been any indication of what's going to go on in the future, we really can't tolerate that. Again, not being able to physically stay at my property during these events because our property is so close to theirs. I can see their house from my house. I'm sure they can see my house from theirs. It's absolutely outrageous. And again, if these events are even held seasonally, we will have to be forced to leave, and I will probably have to be forced to move my horses elsewhere as well. That's it.
Thank you very much, Doc. Do you have any specific questions?
I do not.
Okay. You do? I'm sorry. I asked, did you have any specific questions?
Oh.
So, did you have any specific questions you'd like to ask? Okay. All right. Your statement is appreciated then. Thank you. I just always want to give you an opportunity. Are there other members that want to speak? Yes, please come forward. Come right over to the podium, sir.
It's
all right.
So I'm William Motherell. My brother Andy and we own the farm kitty corner to the Prestons, 3314 concession 10. So we actually are interested in buying the neighboring property. That's one of our biggest concerns. And leading forward on your application, the Prestons would like a new home. Being that we're in the same area, my biggest concern is if we allow Prestons to build a new home, are we too entitled to build a new home? Plus the current one that is existing. My other concern is forever we've heard 50 meters. 50 meters, 50 meters. That was kind of a Sutton rule of thumb, right? And in this application, they're asking for 783 meters. And if that is applied, is that setting a precedent for somebody else to say for build that far away or within that length? I guess where I feel their application is wrote very well, and the clarification, like Roslyn had pointed out, they did submit another proposal or a counter proposal or however you want to say that. And if we allow what their commercial rezoning application states, does that give them the right to, okay, we're going to have one party. We say that on paper, but we have one party every week for 12 months of the year. And how are you now? We have to deal with that. We're next door. I'm for farm growth. I have nothing against the Prestons personally. I feel as if they're just trying to make an average living like anybody else. That's, you know what? That's fine. I just feel that my biggest concern is what the presidential will stand coming forward.
Right.
is by granting certain things. And if things are granted, are they going to be set in stone that if they're not followed, an appeal or a shutdown or consequences towards them, actions will be followed up with, I guess is what my
Okay.
big thing is. So
I'll tell you what, let's go to our staff and see if our staff can answer some of those questions in regards to, first of all, a new home being built. The 50-meter setback is what I believe you mentioned. Rosalind or Amy, do you have any comments in that regard?
Well, just to say that is correct. Like, we have set a distance, and it has been in the bylaw since 2006, but that's why people make applications, and that's why we're having a public meeting. And I guess I don't really have anything further to say, because we're kind of just at the stage of listening as well, and we haven't really made a decision on anything.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So we're just sort of gathering information, but the fact is that, yeah, there is a 50-meter setback requirement. And it doesn't mean, though, that we haven't also looked at other applications in the past. So I can offer that as well, that this isn't the first one that's come forward to ask for a variation in that setback. So.
okay, that was just my biggest concern, was if we grant that far of a distance, which where they're proposing on the land that they want to build, I could agree with you that it's marginal land. It's pasture ground, let's call it, right? So where they're asking to build it is, I mean, land wise, that's was kind of, if it sets a precedent for that distance, if that's just open up a can of worms, that's all I'm asking.
Well, if I can just comment, that is that the can of worms is the fact that we have public meetings. We hear from public to hear their commentary, and then we ask for a report, and then council will consider the information. So that's the can of worms right here.
Yeah, exactly.
So thank you for that.
Okay.
Anything further that you want to add, or
I
any
think
questions?
that pretty much covers it. I mean, I'll let my other members of the family join up here. If they want to
Sure.
run.
Does your brother want to come up? Okay. then.
Yeah, so,
All right. Thank you very much.
all right.
Thank you for Mr. Metherall. That's great. Is there anybody else who has any comments for or against this application? Yes, ma'am. Please come forward.
I'm Alma Fillion, and I live in 9794 675 Road, and I am the good neighbor of the Prestons. And I do appreciate them a great deal. They're good neighbors, and we have tried to be as kind and sensitive to our needs for the most part. Speaking to Mr. Preston, he said that there was a mistake on the actual submission. That is not what he requested. So I'm terribly confused now that his representative says that they do require a cafe or restaurant or whatever you want to call it. I was told that there will be no more than 3 agri-tours for a year. And the parties will be also maybe 1 major event a year. In my experience, this goes on all summer long, and we haven't had a problem with them, but we do have a problem with the amount of people that come, the disorderly conduct, the damage they do, even to my property. They vomit, urinate in my property. It's become out of hand, and they're inebriated. So as far as I'm concerned, I am totally delighted that my neighbors can have a new home. No objection, they deserve it. And if that's not possible due to the bylaws that this lovely lady has provided, then maybe they can expand in the home that they have so that they can have what they need. But we shouldn't have a commercial area in an area that is agricultural, that is to protect the land. And that's what you people are here for, to protect the land. And I am for it. I want to please my neighbors, and I've been extremely patient with all kinds of things that have transpired for years. And yes, the music sometimes is so loud, I cannot sleep. My dogs get upset. My cow starts to move. It's a problem. And they have the right to make $1, but not at the expense of making a commercial area and an agricultural area. We have been protecting the land, and I want to continue to do that. I do want to help my neighbor. And if he wants to build a home, fine. a packing plant in there? Absolutely not. Because the amount of traffic that we have already, number one, we're walking in a golf course. There's batches and holes in the entire area. How much more is going to be with all these buses and tours? It's already many, and there's never 30 people. There's over like 150 or more. There's buses and buses that come. And then the buses are late at night, 1 o'clock in the morning, 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock. There's been several times it's 3 o'clock in the morning with a commercial area. Where is the ending? Who protects the neighborhood? The people that live there. The minerals have been for 300 years and generations protecting the land. Now, building a home, by all means. Changing the zoning, absolutely not. Making commercial area, absolutely not. A pack for packing is not necessary. The Prestons have already another property in Highway 124 where they put their employees. I don't see the need for another place for more employees, which they come from Mexico. So as far as I'm concerned, adding to their home would be the perfect solution and putting whatever other area they need. Then it's a permit to just expand their property and not to commercialize an agricultural area. So my question is, if Mr. Preston has informed me that that was submitted wrong and that the township made a mistake, why are we seeing here the submission as the same?
Yeah.
Is there a mistake here?
Sure. Let's get to that. If I may, Mr. Finbo or Mr. Preston, would you like to address this concern in regards to a mistake?
I'm not going to speak to a mistake, but what I will speak to is the initial application. It was quite broad, and I admit that it was a very broad application. And as I said earlier in my presentation, we've been listening and we understand what the concerns are, and we've really focused on narrowing the scope. This is very common with a planning act application, be it a zoning bylaw amendment or otherwise. So we've been listening and we've really curtailed or pulled back on those proposed uses. And I know there's been some discussion about the restaurant cafe. To be very clear, that building will only be operated in conjunction with these small coordinated tours. It's not going to be open to the general public. It's going to be small groups that make arrangements to come and they have the farm tour, they visit the greenhouses, they visit the fields, they receive orientation in terms of sustainability and sustainable farm practices, the things that Gillian and Brent hold very dear to themselves. And then, yes, of course, they'll have the opportunity to share food. That's part of everyone's lives that we deal with. So whether it wasn't a mistake, the application was very clear. It asked for a lot of things. It's been refined. It's been refined very specifically to what we've presented here tonight. Okay.
All right. Thank you very much. Are there any other members from the public? Oh, you'd like to come back? Please do.
I appreciate what you said, but my neighbor, who I believe and trust, told me there was a mistake on that submission, that the township of Clearview had made a mistake, that he intended not to have a cafe or a restaurant. He just wanted a home for his wife, Jillian, and himself. Is that not correct?
Yeah, can I come up and?
Sure.
1 second.
Mr.
But tourism and having those trips, it's never 30 people.
Yeah.
All those buses and parking and all that, that's already commercializing and making tourism.
Mhm.
Toronto's for that.
Yeah.
This area is for cows.
Yeah.
And for planting.
Yeah.
And for planting and preserving the land.
Sure.
Not for tourists.
Yeah. Mr. Preston, if you want to come forward, just before you go though, I will comment that there is also a tool that the township uses, which is outside of this, which is the special event permit to actually host these special events. Yeah, that's right. So that's a separate application to what's actually happening here tonight, which speaks to the buses and the people and the noise, et cetera. Okay. Mr. Preston.
Thanks. So I did say to Mrs. Fillion that I thought the township had made a mistake in the application, included uses that we hadn't asked for in the initial application. I don't know if that's true or not. I think it probably isn't true. I think it was we probably did include all of those uses like a restaurant and everything in our initial application, but it was a long time ago. We've had a lot of consultants involved in this. I wasn't always involved in all the conversations. Gil and I weren't involved in all the conversations between David and Rosalind. So I take responsibility for the error. The important fact here, though, is that we have very significantly narrowed the application. And we are not proposing some of the things that people are most concerned about. In terms of the events and the impact on neighbors, as everyone said, we do have one big fundraiser every year. It's June 24th this year. We have to get a special event permit for that event, and it exempts us from the noise bylaw until 11 o'clock, I think, at night. And we're still bound by the noise bylaw after 11 o'clock. We know that event has an impact on our neighbors. That's why we invite all of our neighbors to attend for free. And the Fillions and Marika and the Metherals have all at different times attended the event as our guests, because we think the best way to avoid impacting the neighbors is to have them at the party. And so we'll continue to do that, but that is only once a year. And there's no intention of doing that more than once a year, and nothing in the commercial zone would allow us to do an event like that without a special event permit.
So
There aren't parties every Saturday. And when we spoke earlier, you said that there was one incident when people had come over and had problems with on your property, and that you hadn't told me about it. And we've never had, Marika and her father have never complained about noise to us. They've never once said this is disruptive or it's a problem or anything else. So this is the first that we're hearing about it.
Okay. We're going to have someone else come forward. I see a different person, and perhaps we can turn around and ask other questions. Please come forward. Hello.
Good evening. My name's James Metherall. My wife and I own lot 5, concession 12. I think we should cut to the chase here.
Sure.
Mr. Preston phoned me whenever he thought there was going to be a change, or we were reading that we didn't know. What he did say to me was, he said, we want to build a new house so we can get away and have a private spot. But it's okay for the neighbors that are close to hear all of the stuff that goes on this commercial, ask for a commercial area. So I think that's very wrong. And you admit to saying that to me.
Yeah.
It's all to do with privacy.
But what I said is we live in the center of our business where all of our employees are there every day. It's not about the events. We've lived right in the middle of all these events. For many
So the
years.
neighbors live with it every day.
Well,
I've said enough. That's all I
okay.
want to
Thank
say.
you very much. Thank you, Mr. Metherall. Appreciate your comment. Was there anybody else who wanted to bring forward some comments? I saw some hands. Yes, no, perhaps. Okay, I will do the going twice. Yes, please. Yep, that's just step up again. Please do. This is all part of the recording, and as well as creating the Zoom meeting file. So that's why this would do. Yeah.
In Ireland, there's a tiny little field where there's a championship football game, and they only permit 1 month a year for 5 people every day for that 1 month to go and walk in that tournament area. Well, there's a permanent in-groove in that ground. There is a road, and it's called the man-made road because every day there's 5 people that walk it for 1 month. So it's not so much the size that matters, it's the frequency that matters. So when it comes to these agri-tours, it's not about the 30 people. It's the 30 people, how many times a year? Is there a schedule? Is there a time of designated dates that they are allowed to come? Or is it book as you want and come whenever you want, as long as it's booked? Because at that point, that's the actual problem. It's the quantity and the amount of time they're coming, not the frequency, the quantity of the people. And that's actually more a concern than anything now.
Okay.
So my question is, do you know how many times a year you would want to do that?
If there's a mechanism for having a limit on the number, if there's a way to control in the bylaw the number of events that we have, then we're perfectly happy to do that. Like we have no problem with that at all.
Okay. I'm going to go for number 3, going for the third time. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak or ask any questions for or against or comments in regards to this application? All right. Then we will close the public portion. I'll turn to the committee. Are there any members of council committee who have any questions? Mr. Deputy Mayor, anybody else making my list? Okay, Mr. Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
First of all, I want to thank everybody here tonight. And I can tell you there's a lot of applications that we get. We do not get this sense of input. First of all, I'll make it very clear. I was out there today and looked at the property. So if you don't think we haven't looked over this property, guess again. So I really appreciate, I did talk to Mrs. Files about it. I do get the sense that one half has made an effort to try and accommodate. And I really appreciate from the other side, the input of their comments, because we take them very seriously. I am now going to ask some questions. First of all, to our planner, under this circumstance, does this application go under site plan control?
Thank you for that question. Yes, so the idea is that there will be a separate application at whatever time. We encourage them to make it as soon as possible, but site plan control will be applied to this.
Okay, so everybody understands that. Number 2, Mr. Preston, could you explain to us the seasonal usage of the type of your business you run? What time of the year do you usually run from?
Our farming business runs from May until October, and we are actually harvesting and selling product from late May until early October.
Okay. The other comment is during the week, what days do you predominantly operate?
Predominantly Monday to Friday. Our usual pickup schedule from our wholesalers is Monday to Thursday.
And your tours?
Our tours happen more often on the weekend, but they do often happen during the week, and they're predominantly during the day. The vast majority of them are daytime events and if there's a meal involved, it's a lunch.
Okay, thank you. You may answer this question as well, your planner will. Will there be a formal parking lot? I heard some comments made about parking on the road and stuff like that. In this site plan, they've defined the number of spots. Will there be a gravel parking lot or whatever the situation is?
Yeah. We've you couldn't see the map very well that David showed, but in the commercial zone area, we identified a parking area. And we have had parking on the side road for small events in the past, so we want to completely eliminate that. But for our large annual event, we never allow anyone to park on the side road.
Good, thank you. I heard the comment from Willie Trott there. I thank you. When I looked at that property today, I will identify as a farmer as well. And I can tell you, I'm one who wants to protect farmland. And putting a house like that, should it be accepted on marginal land, is my wish, so to speak. So anyways, I thank you for that observance and recognizing that. What else was there I had? The other comment I just had, I noticed you had some handicap parking spots. Quick question, will this all be under AODA as well?
Thank you. We've identified on the site plan that was submitted, it's not a formal site plan application, 2 parking spaces. Your question specifically to AODA, that implies a lot. We will have designated parking areas for accessible parking spaces. The area will not, I don't think there is an intent to pave the area to make it fully AOD compliant, but there certainly will be designated parking closer to the event itself and the Farm Sustainability Center for those barrier-free spaces or accessible spaces.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. Any other members of committee or council who have a question or comment, concern? Give it 1 second in case Mr. Broderick wants to say something. He's just returning to the council table. I'll go for the second time. Is there any members of council with any questions? I'll go for the third time. Is there any members of questions? Yes, no, nothing. Okay, then this committee has nothing further to add. I'm just referring if I have a question, because I did have one thing. Yes, I do. To the Prestons and Jillian, your farm operation is a growing operation, as in you grow product. You are not really a livestock operation in any way, shape, or form, as far as you don't carry or you don't produce bird cultures or anything like that. Is that correct? That's not your intention?
No, that's not our intention. We custom graze a herd of around 20 cattle in the summer,
okay.
in the
You do.
summertime,
Yes.
but they don't belong to us. They belong to someone else, and we just provide pasture for them. They never go on our barn, and they're not there over the winter. So they're sort of there from May till September.
I was thinking of the bird business, to be quite honest. I had a conversation just today with a local farmer about avian flu going on in the bird industries. And I was thinking about the visitors coming to your farm, that would be a problematic thing.
No.
If you had birds.
We have a few laying hens for our own use, but it's not part of the commercial
Okay.
operation.
All right.
Yeah.
Just keeping that in mind. All right. That's all I have then. So at this time, if there's no further questions and nothing further, we will close this public meeting. And so that concludes the public meeting in regards to file number 2023005ZA for this evening's agenda. We want to thank all of those who have attended and provided comments for their interest in this matter, and all input received with regard to the proposal will be fully considered by the staff in their recommendation and by council in their decision with respect to the application. A report regarding this proposal will be prepared for council, who will make a decision concerning this matter at a future meeting. Okay, so now we'll close this portion of the meeting, and we're going to proceed to our next meeting, which is another meeting tonight. The same sort of rules apply. And so I'll commence the second meeting. All right. We'll now begin the public meeting with respect to zoning bylaw amendment 2023-006 ZB. It's for 2562 County Road 124 on this evening's agenda. Planning staff will now start with a brief presentation concerning the application. And I believe, Mr. Finbo, you're also the representative on this one as well. So we will welcome Rosalind back to the podium to give us a presentation.
You. Thank you, Mayor and Council and the public. We are here for the public meeting zoning bylaw amendment 2023-006-ZB, and it's on property 2562 County Road 124. Next slide. And this is a subject map showing the subject lands in the hatched out area. Next slide, please. Again, this is another air photo map showing the subject lands. They're outlined in red. And the existing policy framework, the current Township of Clearview official plan designation for these lands is Greenland Natural Heritage Area and rural. And the current zoning bylaw categories are environmental protection EP, archaeological assessment overlay AR, and hazard land overlay FP. Thank you. This just shows the map of the existing official plan. And again, the lands are outlined in red, with the Greenland Natural Heritage Area being this green area. And there's a small little section designated rural. The existing zoning map shows that the property is actually completely zoned environmental protection. And it is outlined in red here. The hazard land overlay is actually shown in light blue on this little key map here. And the proposal. So the application states that the purpose is to zone a portion of the southeast section of the lands from environmental protection EP zone to rural RU zone, and that the application states that the effect of the application would be to permit construction of a single detached dwelling, accessory building, garage, and other accessory uses. The application submission included planning justification report, environmental impact assessment, EIS, archaeological property assessment, elevations in 3D dimension elevations, and a site plan showing the location of the proposed structures. And this is actually a map just showing the proposed zoning area. So the black outline is the area proposed to be rezoned to rural as opposed to the EP. And just next slide, please. And this map is the actual site plan. So again, this is County Road 124 driveway, proposed accessory structure area, proposed dwelling, and then existing tennis court, I believe. And then the red is sort of the outline of the proposed zoning. Notice in circulation. So notice of the subject zoning bylaw amendment application has been given in accordance with the Planning Act on March the 8th, 2023. And it was done through mailing and posting of a sign on the property. Details of this application and the supporting materials have been made available to the public and have been circulated to the relevant commenting agencies. This is circulation map of the properties that were circulated with the mail out notice. The Planning Act requires 120 meters. Subject lands is located in the red outline, and the yellow lands are the lands that received the mail out notice. Public comments. This is the time for that. No public comments received to date. Wait, and next slide. And contact information. So if anyone would like to contact me, they can email me or give me a call. Slide, please. And then just in terms of the review, we're at the public meeting stage. Staff will consider all comments received. Staff will do a recommendation report to council. Council will either approve or deny. And then there is an appeal period. If there is no appeal received, the decision of the bylaw will come into force and effect. And that concludes my presentation.
All right. Thank you very much, Rosalind. I'm sure you'll be available to answer any questions if needed. Mr. Finbo, would you like to carry on with your presentation on behalf of the applicant?
Yeah, thank you again, Mayor Measures, members of council, and the public, both here and virtually. My name is David Finbo, and I'm here on behalf of John and Joanne Kennedy, and they're here tonight as well. So I'll try not to repeat what Rosalind has already covered with you. But again, the application is for 2562 County Road 124, which is on the west side of 124, just south of Duntroon. Next slide, please. So lands are strip 100. Give or take, and they're predominantly covered by woodlands, the Bateau River, and then there's some cultural meadow in the southeast corner of the property. That's the area in which the application is focused on. Next slide, please. So again, we're here to receive comments tonight and answer questions regarding the application, and once again, to listen. And to be very clear, the proposal here is to permit the construction of a single-family dwelling, detached dwelling, and an accessory garage building on the existing strip 100. And I think Rosalind showed a proposed site plan in terms of the location of the dwelling as well as the accessory building. Next slide, please. It's the zoning bylaw amendment is required as the subject lands are currently located in an environmental protection and rural RU zone. The RU zone is only a small little strip, and I don't think it's actually the piece fronting on 124, if I remember correctly, and it's not very wide at all. Effectively, the lands cannot be developed right now for any purpose because it's predominantly environmentally protected. The owner is John Kennedy. Again, my name is David Finbo. We had an environmental impact study completed by Neil Morris and the archaeological assessment by AMIC Consultants Limited. Next slide. Studies that were identified as being required as part of the application were a justification report, an EIS, environmental impact study, and then the archaeological assessment report stages 1 and 2. Next slide. As I mentioned earlier, they're constrained by forests. woodlands and the unevaluated wetland features, which are on the far west of the property, and then the Bateau Creek itself. And the EIS was completed in support of the application, with it providing recommendations with regard to supportable building sites, very limited sites. That EIS was circulated by the township to their peer review consultant. We have received comments from the peer review consultant, and our ecologist is working in terms of responding to those comments. And in my layman's position or opinion, there isn't anything there of significance that can't be addressed. The archaeological potential, there is an archaeological overlay. Archaeological assessment report stages 1 and 2 were completed, and they were filed with or entered into the Ontario Public Register of Archaeological Reports, and no further study is necessary for this site. Not very good slides, but it certainly indicates where the proposal is. There's an existing entrance off of County Road 124, which the county have looked at and have accepted as being an entrance subject to an entrance permit. The existing granular road takes you westerly on the site back to an area where there currently is a tennis court. It's just immediately to the east of that tennis court where the building envelope is proposed. And we are being very careful in terms of not encroaching into the woodlands to the north. There is a butternut tree that was identified that's significantly outside of their area, but it's further to the south and to the west. Next slide. So this gives you a good sense as to where the building siting is. It shows in the darker piece, the snake-looking piece as being the existing granular driveway into the site from County Road 124 and right back to where the existing tennis court is. There is an old barn foundation that's located just to the south of that granular driveway, and you can see it as a dotted line very close to where the tennis court is, just to the east of that area. So at one time, these lands would have been farmed in this localized area for sure. Who knows when, 100 years ago, 50 years ago, but there was some active agricultural operation in that area. Next slide. This is a cut and fill rendering of the proposed dwelling. The intent here is to actually make the dwelling sit low on the ground and not be at all seen from neighboring properties. It is a dwelling that will be used by the Kennedy family. John and Joanne live in close proximity on the neighboring property, and they're looking for a place where their family can stay. So in summary, the zoning bylaw amendment has regard to the environmental features on the subject lands. It's supported by an EIS as well as the archaeological assessment. And these two studies have concluded that the provincial interest in those areas have been addressed. And as I said earlier, in terms of the EIS, it is we are actively working with our ecologist to address the comments from the township's peer review consultant. We're submit that the proposal is consistent with the PPS and the growth plan and in conformity with the county and township official plans. And we are here to receive comments and to answer any questions that come forward. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Fimbo, and welcome to the Kennedys. Nice to see you. At this point, does anyone in the audience have a wish to make any comment, ask a question, to address the committee with respect to the application? Questions may be directed to the responded to by the applicant, but they must be directed through the chair. Please remember to complete and submit a delegation form. And I'll call for the first time. Is there anybody from the public that wish to speak? For the second time? And for the third time? And we will not, we show that there are no members of the public wish to speak. Okay, at this time, we'll close the public questions. Does anybody from the committee have any questions of the application? Oh, we have some, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
I'd like to address this to Mr. Kennedy. We know each other from before. I was out there looking today. I've been on your property before. Can you promise when you put your entrance in that you will make it big enough for fire trucks and stuff to have a good egress and access? Because on this picture, when you're out there, it goes in and makes a sort of a 90-degree, make it nice and curved so our fire trucks and ambulances can get in there if they need to. So that's a comment more than a question. And
I think that could be addressed by the staff in the report. Is that right? Yeah. Mr. you're comfortable with that answer or question? Thank you. I'm going to go to Mr. MacArthur first, and then I can come over here. Go ahead, Mr. MacArthur.
Yeah, I'm just questioning on the site plan there where the lot line comes right in, basically touching the north side of the house. There's no need for a setback of any kind from the house to the edge of the EP protected area.
I'll refer to the staff, I think, on that question. Careful.
Thank you. I'm just flipping to my maps here to see if I can actually see the.
Lexi, would you be able to bring up the map again?
On page. Was it this one? With the red? So sorry, the question was, whether there's a setback?
Yeah, like you're showing,
The-
is that the divide line between the rural and the EP touching the house?
So
North side.
there is a red, on the north side,
That triangle right there,
She's looking at.
right here,
It's in
down to the house. The house is the red, right?
right here. Yeah, oh, right here. you
Yeah,
mean.
I'm just questioning whether there needs to
Right.
be any minimum setback or.
Yeah, so that's my understanding. It's the envelope. It's not necessarily the actual building. And because it's not a lot line, that's what we typically regulate, are setbacks to lot lines. However, I will defer to the to David Fimbo if he has further clarification on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Finbo, any comment?
Yeah, if I may, Mayor Measures, that big red blob represents the building envelope, a generous building envelope. The house will be constructed within that envelope. There isn't an explicit setback from the EP zone. There are setbacks from lot lines or property lines. However, with that being said, the environmental impact study does have recommendations in terms of setbacks from the woodland to the north. And that came forward in the EIS. The township's consulting environmental group have asked a question in terms of what is proposed in the way of the setback. So that will be tied down from an environmental perspective more so than anything else.
All right, I think we're getting there. We're trying to get the map up, but I think we're okay.
think we're
Thank you
good.
very much for that. So Councillor Janine had a question. Is that right?
Yeah, it's just through your worship to us, it's a general question, really nothing much. The accessory building, correct me if I'm wrong, I thought that the accessory building had to be behind the primary dwelling, not out in front like that.
Thank you. That's a really good question. So in our agricultural and rural areas, they're actually permitted to be in any yard. But you are correct. So for in our residential areas, we do typically require them to be behind the front main wall, but in this case, it's a larger piece of land, so we do allow them in any yard. So thank you, but thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other members of council, committee, any other members? No? Okay, thank you. We'll close those. I do have one small. I heard you mention the entrance permit. Is there a county entrance permit, or are you in the application for that, or what's the status on the county entrance permit?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Measures. We have not yet made application, but during the pre-consult, we pre-consulted with the county. The county have provided comments indicating that the entrance is okay, but we do require a residential entrance permit.
Right.
So in my mind, it's just a matter of process.
I think that sounds like it to me, but I just wanted to just check to make sure that was under this part of this application. It's great. All right, then I have nothing further. And so I thank you, Mr. Finbo and staff. And so this concludes the public meeting with respect to file number 2023-006 ZA of this evening agenda. We thank all those who attended, right? And provide comments for their interest in this matter, and all input received with regard to the proposal will be fully considered by staff in their recommendation and by council in their decision with respect to the application. A report regarding the proposal will be prepared for council, who will make a decision concerning this matter at a future meeting. And therefore, this concludes the public meeting portion of this agenda of tonight. Thank you. At this point, we do have the bylaw to confirm the proceedings of our council meeting, so I will read that and look for a mover and seconder. Recommendation be it resolved bylaw of 23-31, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the March 29th, 2023 special council meeting be presented and read a first, second, and third time and finally passed on the 29th day of March 2023. Can I have a mover and seconder? Deneen and Walker, thank you very much. Appreciate that. And any questions on the bylaw? Seeing none, I'm prepared to call it. All those in favor? And the bylaw carries. Thank you. And I was just referring to my phone for a minute because I wanted to check on something before we do the motion to adjourn. Go Siskins. They're in game 4 tonight. Right? Game 4. And they're in the playoffs. And so we're hoping very much that they are successful. And we'll see our friends from New Tecumseh, Alliston in the next round. All right. At this time, we have the recommendation for a resolution to adjourn. And the time is, we're going to call it 8:00 on the dot. Mr. Beelan, Mr. MacArthur, all those in favor? And that carries. Thank you. Good night. Go Siskins.